live on YouTube, members.
Good evening, councillors. Welcome to the full council meeting. As we always do, I need to read out a statement before we make a start. Please note that this meeting is being streamed live to the internet. Please could all members ensure their microphone is set to mute unless they are speaking, to reduce any background noise. It is important to remember that you may only speak when called by the chairman. Also, ensure any other devices nearby are switched to silent mode, as they can be distracting. Members should use the raise hand button when they wish to speak. When it's your turn to speak, I will call your name and invite you to speak. Once you've spoken, I will flatten your hand. If during the vote there are technical problems, the committee services officer will contact the relevant member so that they are able to give their vote over the phone, which will be on the loudspeaker so that other members can hear. If any member loses connection during this meeting, then the meeting will be paused for a period of up to 3 minutes in order to give the relevant member an opportunity to rejoin the meeting. It is recommended to councillors that should they struggle to rejoin the meeting online, that they rejoin the meeting via the telephone number given in order to assist with the smooth commencement of the meeting. I just want to have a moment of reflection. It was with sadness that we learned of the passing of 2 of our current and past colleagues since our last meeting on November the 25th. We were shocked and saddened to hear of the sudden passing of friend and colleague Diane Martin on the 14th of January. Diane was case officer and much loved and valued member of the parking team. Also, Alan Kirby, who passed away earlier this month. Alan started work here in the 1970s, working primarily in health and safety before becoming HR manager. Alan retired early and rejoined us again in 2007 as Coastal Park Warden until he left in 2013. We also wish a speedy recovery for Michael Lyons, former councillor of both Hythe and District Councils. Michael has been in the William Harvey Hospital for the past 8 weeks. We wish him a speedy recovery. Please let us take a moment to remember and reflect on their contribution to the council and all they did to serve our community. Thank you. I'd like now to introduce Father Alex Saba, who will address us. Father Alex.
Thank you, Anne. And I'm going to pray for those people you just mentioned. That will be the first part of my prayer. And then the second part will be for this gathering this evening. God of life, from you we come, to you we return. We thank you for the lives of Alan Kirby, Diane Martin, employed by the Council of Folkestone and Hythe. During their lives and pilgrimage here on earth, they have spent part of that in service of their neighbors, brothers and sisters, to the work of the council. Now that they have left this life, we entrust them to you. In your compassionate love, grant them peace and rest with you forever.
Amen.
We remember the living as we entrust the health also of Michael Lyon to you. Into your hands, Father, we entrust his future. God is love. In the desire to make us share in this love, he sent his Son into the world to come to our aid and in a gentle manner, and through his kindness, he helped those who were weak, sick, and unfortunate. In his great love for all of us, Christ said that whatever we do for the least among us, we do for him. He called those who show compassion blessed of his Father, and promised them eternal life. Let us pray for the Lord's richest blessings on the members of our council who are devoted to helping their brothers and sisters. Lord, may everything we do begin with your inspiration and continue with your help, so that all our prayers and works may begin in you and by you be happily ended. We make these prayers through Christ our Lord. Amen. And I have finished.
Thank you, Father Alex. Thank you very much.
No.
Right, can we have apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chairman. This evening we have apologies from Councillor Gain. Thank you.
Councillor Gain, thank you very much. Any declarations of interest?
If I may, Chair, having taken advice from our legal officer, I have to make a voluntary declaration in respect of agenda item 5. I shall neither speak at the debate or vote on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mayers. Any more? No? Thank you. Oh, Councillor Rolfe and Councillor Susan Carey. Councillor Rolfe first.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to declare a DPI in Opportunitas since I'm a director, and we do have a dispensation to participate, and a personal interest as a member of New Romney Town Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Carey.
Thank you, Chairman. Having seen the advice that Councillor Mayers was given, I also would like to make a voluntary declaration. My husband is an employee of the UK Border Force. However, he has no direct dealings with Napier Barracks. And so whilst I'm making the declaration, I feel I'm still able to take part and vote should it be necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carey. No more? No. Okay. Right, we can move on to Chairman's communications. It has been a fairly quiet period regarding attending functions since the last full council. Nevertheless, on the 27th of the 1st 21, Holocaust Day, I visited the Holocaust Memorial in the Garden of Remembrance. As this was not advertised, I read out a prayer that I had taken along and laid a wreath on behalf of the Folkestone Hythe District Council. A few other people gathered, as they usually do, to lay their wreaths and flowers and to place a stone on the memorial. Social distancing and wearing of masks was observed. Also, on the 27th of the 1st, 21, I was pleased to be invited to attend the Zoom meeting of the installation of the new priest at St John's Church in Folkestone, Reverend Adam Denley. The service was conducted by the Bishop of Dover, Rose Hudson Wilkin. The Deputy Councillor Philip Martin and I continue to thank all those officers, staff, councillors, emergency services, National Health Service and volunteers who continue the hard and oft times difficult task of managing the ever-changing face of COVID-19 pandemic. It has been heartening to see how many have given their time and donations to feed those less fortunate than ourselves and to make sure that many children received a gift at Christmas. We now look forward to seeing the ease of lockdown to continue. Thank you. We move now to the announcements of the Leader of the Council. Councillor Monk.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and good evening to you all. We continue to help our businesses that are eligible to receive the Government Business Support Grant by getting that grant to them quickly. In the 6 weeks up to February the 15th, our officers distributed a further 2.15 million to around 950 businesses. If you've had your own business, you will know how critical cash flow is and how helpful these timely payments have been. There are other councils around the country that have not even paid out the 2020 grants. So once again, I thank our officers for their assiduity in getting these grants out. I, along with our MP Damien Collins and Dr. Priest, have had meetings with both the Home Secretary and separately the Archbishop of Canterbury about the unsuitability of using Napier Barracks as a holding centre for asylum seekers. As you may imagine, the Archbishop is of the same opinion as us that it is not suitable. I do not know and cannot predict what the eventual outcome of these meetings will be. You will have probably seen from our recent press release that the new business centre at Mountfield Road, a joint venture between us and the East Kent Spatial Development Company, assisted by funding from the NDA, has had the first concrete poured and should be operational from January next year, which will be a welcome boost for encouraging small businesses down on the marsh. Across the district, NHS-led vaccination centres have done a wonderful job, although they might slow down a little over the next couple of weeks due to appointment difficulties and an uncertain supply of vaccine. Which brings me nicely onto the roadmap for recovery. It would seem, barring a spate of bad data, that all restrictions on public meetings will be lifted by June. So I have asked Dr. Priest to arrange a physical council meeting for the latter part of June. And on that hopeful note, I end my report and move that it is accepted.
Thank you, Councillor Monk. Councillor McConville.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Leader. I would also echo the praise for the staff who are working with our local businesses to ensure they are able to reopen when allowed to do so. Also to those staff working tirelessly behind the scenes with duties to do with the upcoming census and our local elections happening in May. Yes, I would agree completely that the barracks are indeed unsuitable. And I also look forward to the outcome of the recent inspection. I hope the Leader can join me in asking our ONS committee to do whatever is in their power to provide accountability and offer answers to the many questions of both the council and the community. vaccination is the route to normality, and I am pleased to see that some early teething problems with the Volker building seem to have ironed out and the operation looks to be running much smoother. Once again, communication is key, both between the agencies running the programme and our residents. And whilst I'm most looking forward to be able to sit in a restaurant once again, and probably I'll be in need of a haircut by then as well, I also miss the physical chamber and hope to be back in it as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor McConville. Councillor Monk, did you wish to reply?
No, Madam Chairman, I think we're all in agreement.
Thank you very much. So can we have a proposer and seconder to agree to
I have proposed, Madam Chairman.
And I'm happy. Oh, okay.
Sorry? What was that?
Happy to second, David Wimble.
Oh, thank you, David. Right. Okay, that's agreed, is it, Council?
Yes, agreed.
Agreed.
Thanks very much.
Agreed.
Right, we move on to item 5, opposition business. There's one item of opposition business from the Labour group, 30 minutes allowed, and you must choose one of the 4 options set out in the agenda. Councillor McConville?
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Yes, thank you everyone for the opportunity to speak on this. This motion is quite simple, really, even if the subject matter behind it is quite complex. As the leader has stated just now, as well as our MP and countless other people from various organisations, Napier Barracks in its current form is not fit for purpose. As part of scrutiny's remit, it has the power to host evidence gathering sessions. The LGA workbook on scrutiny highlights that such sessions can include representatives from other organisations. So it is possible for the committee to call up such people as representatives from the Home Office, Clear Springs Ready Homes, local charity workers, residents, etc. Why do this, you may ask? Scrutiny has a role to not only look at the council's own operations, but also to work to add social value to our community. I believe the decision to use the barracks in the manner that it has been has caused a break in the social cohesion of our community, not only directly within the vicinity, but much wider afield. There has been a constant commentary in the national media now for many months. Having the question asked and hopefully answered, members, residents will hopefully be able to have a clearer picture of how the district will work with partners to meet the needs of asylum seekers moving forward, and also give valuable recommendations to the government to improve both their decision-making and communication outlets in the future. Many people may have many opinions when it comes to the barracks' current use. However, I am confident the one thing everyone can agree on is that it is not fit for purpose and should be closed. I am proposing this under option C. This has already been submitted to ONS through the various public scoping forms, and your vote tonight will hopefully add weight to that submission. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor McConville. Have you a seconder?
Yes, I'd like to second that as Councillor Michelle Cutenius.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, it's open for debate now. Who wishes to speak? Is that Councillor Hollingsby? Councillor Hollingsby, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I don't disagree with anything that Councillor Conville has said, although there are several things in his motion that I am unable to support. For instance, and I totally agree, for 400 single men, it certainly isn't the place. And I think as a council and as the leader has already said, we've made representations to that effect. However, there are a couple of points that I really cannot agree with. And the first one is that that the residents of the barracks have received limited provisions of food, water, medical supplies and treatment. I cannot agree with that. They have, and I've been on every meeting or virtually every meeting, they have had 3 meals a day. And I'm told that they have been substantial meals and the majority of people have been very happy with them. There have been some issues in that perhaps the food was not exactly what their culture anticipated. The caterers were changed after that to help the service users, but I couldn't agree that they haven't had sufficient food. Also, and water, there was bottled water being available. Secondly, with regard to medical, again, I can't agree with that. There was a nurse on site from day one. All of the service users were registered with the White House surgery very quickly, and if they wanted to get an appointment, they did that through the nurse and appointments could be made. And through that service, they had access to other facilities, other medical requirements. Mental health was an issue, and it has been an issue, but in terms of what they were able to access, it was as much or as little as you and I could do. So I feel that I cannot support the motion with those two particularly in mind. I just wonder if we're being a bit soon in perhaps putting it to scrutiny, and wonder whether we should await the independent Chief Inspector of Borders and Immigration report. And I've just heard in between the Cabinet and this meeting that I've been invited to speak to the Chief Inspector. And I just wonder whether, I've got nothing against it going to scrutiny, but I just wonder whether it might be worth waiting for the result of that inspection. And there has also been a safeguarding inspection. So I mean, nobody could say that it's suitable. It certainly wasn't COVID safe. So I've got no objection to it going to scrutiny, but I just wonder whether it's perhaps just a little bit too early. And one of the things we don't want to do is to use resources of our staff, our officers, if some of the questions or the outcome of the Chief Inspector report is sufficient.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Treloar.
Thank you, Chair. I absolutely wholeheartedly support this motion. I feel that we do have a duty as the District Council to do our own investigations, as well as the other ones that Councillor Hollingsby just mentioned. This did happen within our district. We have been aware, of the situation. I would agree with the statement that there has been inadequate provision. Clearly these things, one story comes through official channels, others come through on the ground, volunteers and residents of the camp themselves. So I suppose the process of it going to ONS is to help make our own minds up. I suppose in a lot of your minds, that statement perhaps is preemptive, but I think we do have enough anecdotal evidence that things have been pretty rotten in there, including inadequate support, I think, in sort of accessing services that need to be accessed. I think that's about it. I think it's an excellent motion. I think it's the right thing to do. I think we have a responsibility to do it. So I'll be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mullard.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I've had a look at this. I've heard it. I've considered it. Firstly, of course, the camp should be closed. In fact, it should never have been open. We mustn't welcome these immigrants as we are doing. I use the word advisedly. They're not residents. They are illegal immigrants. And I will go along with what Madam Chairman said. They are being well fed, well housed, and what more can you want? Certainly more than they had in Calais, although some of them were moaning as though it's not as good as they had in Calais. So yes, we closed the place. It should never have been open. Another huge boatload of illegals arrived on the coast this morning. 200 of the 430, yes, to use the official term residents, to use my term illegals, 200 of the 430 have tested positive for COVID. We don't want that, thanks very much. As I understand, there are only 61 there now at the moment. Most of them have been moved out of God knows where. So I will not support this motion because A, they are well fed, well looked after, and they have better medical facilities than I have. B, we don't want them, and C, they're illegals. They're not asylum seekers, they are illegal immigrants, and I rest my case.
Thank you, Councillor Mullard, but I think you meant you were supporting what Councillor Hollingsby said, not what the chair.
Yes, I'm supporting Councillor Hollingsby. Basically,
Yeah,
I will vote against the motion, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Wimble.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, I'm looking at this in a humanitarian point of view. I very much believe in all lives matter. However, this holding centre was forced upon the district. We wasn't consulted. If we were consulted, we'd have raised lots of questions to hopefully have averted all of this in the first place. As I said, it was meant to be a holding centre whilst their applications were processed. From what I can see, none of these applications have been processed. I've not heard of any being moved on to other places, any being returned back to the countries of origin, or indeed having their applications successfully gone through the British courts so that they could become residents here. I feel so sorry, first of all, for the residents of Sandgate, who some of them are literally petrified by them. Up until recently, they were walking around the town in large groups. I know this isn't what the motion's about, but it helps to demonstrate the fact that it's unsuitable and the way it's been set up is unsuitable. I know the leader, the chief executive and all the officers have been in talks with the Home Office. They've expressed their views that it's not the right place and it's not suitable. However, I agree with what Councillor Hollingsby says. They have been given adequate medical cover, they've been given food and they've been given warmth. I think there's a small minority of troublemakers who are being processed by the police as well now, who understand that the fact that they've caused trouble will very much jeopardise their application for asylum status. But it's not the right place. And unfortunately, the Home Office is the people that force this on us. And they don't seem to be listening to us when we try to explain that it's not suitable.
Thank you, Councillor Wimble. Councillor Rolfe.
Right, thank you, Chairman, and thank you to the other speakers. I too think that this is, however you label the people that are getting into boats and coming across, it is without doubt a humanitarian crisis happening on our doorstep, and we should not ignore that. I would like to say that there was strong early opposition to the siting of this, and this were of this interim, what I'd call respite centre for asylum seekers, and this was strongly put forward by MP, by our district council representatives, who were unequivocal in saying that it is not an appropriate site. Indeed, reports that more than 20 people were sleeping in a room during a global pandemic, which obviously exacerbated the COVID outbreak that took place within that area, which is why there are only around about 60 people there now. I believe there was a Q&A in Parliament only today. I would also support the fact that actually at the moment staff resources need to be concentrating on other matters. And I would support Councillor Hollingsby's approach that given that the investigation is already being undertaken by the Home Office, I think the timing of this is absolutely crucial. I think possibly delay any potential to go back to overview and scrutiny committee until the results of that investigation has taken place, at which point then it might be possible. But I feel that we're actually jumping ahead of where we should be, because I think a lot of the questions are being asked, and we need to be careful about how we use our resources. I think the key issue in the whole of this fiasco, and it has been a fiasco and quite frightening for many local people, but also I think for some of those people actually within the barracks themselves, you've got to actually put these people in appropriate sites and take all the factors into consideration. The fact that there was such a lack of consultation and I think lack of respect for the local community, which is headed up by the district council. I think the Home Office made a really big mistake, because had there been proper and appropriate consultation, then during that process, however quick that may have had to have been as a result of the emergency that we were told was happening, the local knowledge would have informed the decision-making process and highlighted the inappropriateness of that particular site. So whilst I disagree with some elements, as in line with Councillor Hollingsby and others have said, however, I think the timing of going to onus needs to be after the formal investigation has taken place. But yeah, a very difficult and very challenging situation.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wade?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I agree with much of what Councillor Rolfe has just said. I find it unfortunate that these people are referred to by various labels such as illegals and so on. I would prefer the label such as fellow human beings, for instance. I think we can hope that none of us will ever find ourselves out on the road without a home. And I think if we do, then we'll hope that the people who are in the position to help us will do so in a respectful and humane manner. Sadly, this has not been the case for these people. They have been placed in unsuitable accommodation, and I think we all agree on that for whatever reason, but the Home Office has clearly behaved in a disgraceful manner here without properly consulting local people and without providing proper accommodation, and I hope that those responsible for that will be brought to account. In respect of the treatment of these people, beyond the fact that they've been placed in unsuitable and unsafe accommodation, there have been instances where the food was not suitable. We all know that some people require certain kinds of food, whether be it kosher or halal or vegetarian, and that it is respectful to give people suitable diet for their own needs. With medication, there have been some problems. I know of one person who required medication for an eye infection and was not given it, and a volunteer had to accompany him to a chemist to go and see if suitable accommodation could be found. So the treatment has not been ideal in all respects. There have been problems with food and medication, but principally it was the Home Office's disgraceful behaviour in placing the people there in the first place. So I will support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Wade. Councillor Catenius?
Thank you, Chair. It's been interesting listening to the debate here this evening. There's been points made by all, that some that I'll agree with, some that I'll disagree with. One point in particular was Councillor Rolfe said about the lack of respect for residents. Though there's also been a lack of respect for the service user of Napier Barracks. We have to remember these are people who have gone through all sorts of trials and traumas, and the way that they are being treated currently is why it is urgent for us to have an investigation and evidence session now. We can't kick this down the road. It's not a can that we can wait until later. It can run alongside other investigations by other partners, and we can work together. And it's about getting evidence so we know exactly what's happening, rather than where we have one sentence from one body and find out something completely different from another. This is about giving advocacy, not only to the residents in Sandgate and surrounding areas, but advocacy of the residents and service users of Napier Barracks and what they have had to go through, what the challenges they've had to face, and of course the trauma and suffering for warehousing people in such a way that we all know is not safe, not suitable, and should not be happening to fellow human beings, especially in Britain.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Monk.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I can't dispute anything that's been said. In fact, I was one of the first people to say it was absolutely ridiculous to put them in the barracks, especially with that number of people. However, what I just would say is that whilst we all feel very strongly about it, and it is entirely up to overview and scrutiny whether they call an evidence session or not, what will the outcome be? Will the outcome actually benefit the district, or will it be just a chance to vent the spleen? I don't know the answer to that. I just do know that you will have to ask certain people to come along, and if they don't come along, it almost immediately invalidates the inquiry. However, as I say, if it is up to overview and scrutiny to decide whether they want to do it, I shall be abstaining on this, because I shall leave it to overview and scrutiny members to make their decision. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Monk. Councillor Prater.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to welcome the support from across the council for the residents of Sandgate and indeed Cheriton who live near the site. From the very first moment, the Home Office deigned to mention to this council that they were looking at using the barracks. The leader, our MP, and I all said this was the wrong place. We all said that these were the wrong facilities for the long-term accommodation of asylum seekers. And despite assurances otherwise that they'd listen to us, that's exactly what the Home Office then proceeded to do. They opened the camp within days, and they've used it for long-term accommodation of asylum seekers. It was wrong then, and it was wrong now. And I think local residents would like to hear our council say so today. Local councillors, local residents knew the site, told the Home Office it's unsuitable. And we're not pleased to be proved right, because it does mean that many people have been held in a deeply unsuitable place for many months. So yes, I support this motion and what it does. I'd like to give some reassurance to Councillor Hollingsby. The motion mentions about how there being limited food and water and medical supplies. Nobody's suggesting, I'm sure for a second, that the food and water and medical supplies have been unlimited. And also the timing of things, the timing of this, it is saying that this should go to scrutiny. It doesn't say it should go to scrutiny immediately. And it will be for the chair of scrutiny to look at when is the appropriate time for it to fit into the scrutiny agenda. But it does call on the council to do other things, including actually making the point directly to the Home Office in writing again that this should be shut. I think that should be done. I actually urge all councillors to vote for the motion if you can.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McConville, do you want to sum up?
Yes, thank you. And thank you to Councillor Prater. He said a few of the things that I was going to say, just addressing some of the many valid points. First and foremost, yes, I mean, this obviously, option C which I'm proposing, as it states, is to agree to examine the matter as part of a future scrutiny programme. So the next scrutiny programme won't even begin for many months. The committee will have to decide on that work programme and move it forward. I would just hope that this would fit in somewhere there within the next 12 months. To address Councillor Monk in terms of outcomes, he's quite right. I mean, it might be the case that certain organisations wouldn't want to engage. I think that would look very poorly on them, considering the big role that they've played with this in our district. So, but obviously, I still believe that we as a district will have some form of engagement in terms of with asylum seekers, as I mentioned earlier, and this would be a way to ensure that progresses in a more positive manner than it has done so far. Yes, I mean, like I say, the points about the food and water and medical supplies. I mean, that is my personal view, which I have taken from talking to many activists, volunteers, and even residents at the barracks. But I think that would be one thing that hopefully could be given more clarity in such an evidence gathering session. So I would hope that you wouldn't dismiss it on that alone. But like I say, I look forward to hopefully seeing this in a future work programme of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee in the future, as I think it is of importance to our district. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McConville. We'll now go to the vote. We'll have the names read out. Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman, what are we voting for? I noticed that the recommendation is recommendation C. I'm not too sure now what we're voting for. Are we voting to close the barracks or leave it open, or are we voting on recommendation C or some other recommendation?
We're voting on the recommendation given by Councillor McConville of C.
Okay.
Agree to examine the matter as part of a future scrutiny programme. That's what we're voting on.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Mrs Berry.
4.
Councillor Brooke.
4.
Councillor Miss Carey.
Against.
Councillor Collier.
4.
Councillor Davison.
4.
Councillor Field.
4.
Councillor Fuller.
4.
Councillor Goddard.
4.
Councillor Godfrey.
4.
Councillor Hills.
4.
Councillor Mrs Hollingsby.
Against.
Councillor Keane.
4.
Councillor Cutenius.
4.
Councillor J Martin.
4.
Councillor P Martin.
Sorry, I think I was muted. Can you hear me now?
We can.
4.
Councillor McConville.
4.
Councillor Mead.
4.
Councillor Mayers.
As I declared an interest, I don't wish to have any vote recorded, but if it's a requirement, then I must abstain.
Councillor Monk.
Abstain.
Councillor Mullard.
For item C.
Councillor Peel.
Abstain.
Councillor Prater.
4.
Councillor Rolfe.
Abstain.
Councillor Shue.
4.
Councillor Treloar.
4.
Councillor Wade.
4.
Councillor Wybrow.
4.
Councillor Wimble. Councillor Wimble.
4.
Councillor Wing.
4.
So I make that 23 in favour, 2 against and 4 abstentions. Therefore carried.
Is it 4? Okay. Right, that's carried. Thank you, councillors. We move on now to item 6, motions on notice. There are no motions on notice. We move on to item 7, corporate plan, creating tomorrow together, 21 to 2030, pages 7 to 48. Can I have a proposer?
Madam Chairman, I will be pleased to propose report number A/20/10 to accept the recommendations, and I would like to speak.
Thank you. Have you a seconder?
Happy to second, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Monk.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm very pleased this corporate plan has come together. It's been a cross-party effort. A lot of input, a lot of views have been taken into account and accommodated. I know that there is going to be an objection to 3 words in it. I've discussed it with my group and thought about it long and hard, and I think they ought to remain in. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Monk. Councillor Prater.
Thank you. I'm having my amendments trailed now by the leader, which is exciting. In that case, I'd like to move an amendment that I have previously notified to officers. The amendment reads that the following recommendation be inserted as recommendation 2, brackets, and subsequent recommendations be renumbered, close brackets. And it reads to remove the words at Prince's Parade from page 12 of the proposed corporate plan. I'd like to move that amendment, and I will speak to it if I have a seconder.
Yes, I will second it, and I reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. If you're happy that I continue, Chairman.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Firstly, please don't worry. I'm not planning at this moment on having a debate on the rights and wrongs of developing Prince's Parade. We'll do that under item 11, if we can. This amendment is instead focused on making this a corporate plan and not just that of the leading group. This shouldn't be your plan. It should be our plan. The honourable intention of the corporate plan is that it's a direction for the council for the next 10 years. It helps us recover from where we currently are. And it does do a lot of that. There's a lot in there that people from across the council and from outside could agree. I've seen suggestions that I've put into the process, accepted into and feature in the plan now. Things around digital infrastructure, financial inclusion and more. It's good to see that. And it's fair to say that it can't be a plan of everything that all of us would like to do in the next 10 years. But it should be a core that all of us would add something different to if it was ourselves. It's a starter for 10. It's not the whole quiz. But it should still be a core that reflects the joint aspiration across the council. And yet, unfortunately, that's not where we're currently at, because for 3 words, I can't support this plan. And I flagged this up before somebody says, oh, you should have done this before. I flagged it on first draft that I couldn't support a corporate plan committing the council to developing Prince's Parade. I've said it to the leader, I said it to the chief executive, the director of corporate resources. We even discussed it 2 hours ago at cabinet. This isn't a late thought, and I'm not throwing things across the table that I haven't mentioned before. There's a simple option here. Just remove the 3 words at Prince's Parade from the document, and then I broadly share the aspirations in the corporate plan. I want to see new leisure facilities and a new swimming pool for Hythe. I just don't want it at Prince's Parade. Some of you do, fine. But remove the 3 words and we can both support what's left. The corporate plan would say, we will invest in leisure facilities, including the development of a new leisure centre for the district located in Hythe. Councillor Monk will have his action plan in terms of developing that, and others of us would have a different one. But this is down to respecting the opinions of others and trying to form a consensus. Sure, you can vote down the amendment and you can probably vote through the corporate plan with every single Labour, Green and Lib Dem member voting against. But what a wasted opportunity to bring us all together. What a waste when for 3-word compromise, you could help turn your plan into our plan. So I'd like to thank all officers, staff, councillors and the public that have had an input into this document. And if this amendment passes, I'll vote for the plan as amended. Because it's not then perfect, but I think it's a reasonable direction of travel. And maybe others will do so as well. So if you'd really like this to have the chance of support from a wider group of councillors, if you really want to start creating tomorrow together, then please support this amendment.
Thank you, councillor. Nobody else wishing to speak? No?
Yes.
Have we got one more? Oh, councillor Wybrow.
Thank you. Yes, I just also think this is such a wasted opportunity. This was a genuine cross-party piece of work. And it's something that I would totally encourage at all times. And just for the sake of 3 words, I'm now not going to be able to support it unless we can get this amendment through. So I would just, it makes no difference whether Princess Parade happens or not if we've had these words in or if we have these words out. It just helps me to support the plan. So I urge you to vote for the amendment, please.
Thank you, councillor. We now vote on the amendment put forward by councillor Prater. Right.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Mrs Berry.
Against.
Councillor Brooke.
Against.
Councillor Miss Carey.
Against.
Councillor Collier.
Against.
Councillor Davison.
For.
Councillor Field.
Against.
Councillor Fuller.
For.
Councillor Goddard.
Against.
Councillor Godfrey.
Against.
Councillor Hills.
Against.
Councillor Mrs Hollingsby.
Against.
Councillor Keane.
For.
Councillor Cutenius.
For.
Councillor Jim Martin.
For.
Councillor Philip Martin.
Against.
Councillor McConville.
For.
Councillor Mead.
For.
Councillor Mayer.
Against.
Councillor Monk.
Against.
Councillor Mullard.
Against.
Councillor Peel.
Against.
Councillor Prater.
For.
Councillor Rolfe.
Against.
Councillor Shube.
For.
Councillor Treloar.
For.
Councillor Wade.
For.
Councillor Wybrow.
For.
Councillor Wimble.
Against.
And Councillor Wing.
For.
Chairman, I make that 13 in favour and 16 against.
Right, the amendment has been lost. So we move to the original motion. Anyone wishing to speak? No?
Yes, councillor Davison.
Oh, hang on. Yeah, sorry, councillor Davison. Yes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm afraid there's another 3 words that are an issue in terms of the corporate plan, and that's Otterpool Garden Town, because I think the point's been well made in the moving of the amendment that the document, it isn't something that represents collectively the view of the council since the makeup of the council changed in 2019. And it also isn't a document that genuinely reflects the wishes of the community either. There was a consultation process that took place about the corporate plan, and members of the public were invited to respond to that, the survey about it. And I'm not sure if the results of that have yet been shared with the public, but if not, I hope they will be, as transparency is another one of the key parts of the corporate plan. But in responding to that, people were asked, to what extent do you feel each commitment in the plan reflects your own needs and ambitions for the district? And the item that came lowest of all the scores in that survey was to deliver a new development at Otterpool Park, where only 17% of people responded, who responded to the residents' survey, which was a survey inviting people to reply, and 13% of people who responded to an open survey said that that reflected their needs and ambitions a great deal. It was a pitifully low score, even compared to the item that came next in the list of issues that people said didn't really reflect their needs and ambitions for our district. So that for me is a major issue, and I think it's very clear that the plan is not a plan that represents the community or the wishes of the broader council since 2019. So I'll be opposing it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Treloar.
Thank you, Chair. I'll also be opposing the plan, just on the basis that it does not go nearly far enough in speaking of our response to the climate and ecological crisis, that any corporate plan can be written without those things front and centre these days. Just makes it appear really outdated even before it's published, to be honest. And just to highlight my point, this is just something that I saw this week. It was the head of the Environment Agency on Tuesday, and speaking to the annual conference of the Association of British Insurers, just highlighting that the breakdown of our climate is not science fiction, and that in recent years several of the reasonable worst case scenarios had happened in the UK, with more extreme weather and flooding. And he urged politicians to take action to reduce emissions and adapt to the inevitable impacts of the climate emergency. So I take that as us as local politicians as well. He said that much higher sea levels will take out most of the world's cities, displace millions, and make much of the rest of our land surface uninhabitable or unusable. Much more extreme weather will kill more people through drought, flooding, wildfires, and heat waves than most wars have. The net effects will collapse ecosystems, slash crop yields, take out the infrastructure that our civilization depends on, and destroy the basis of the modern economy and modern society. So I'm just wondering why, as a council, when we have the head of the EA saying this to, the leaders in our financial sector, absolutely foregrounding this crisis, why is that not baked in to our corporate plan? It just seems appallingly negligent to me. And this is not hyperbole. These are our sort of, our leaders sort of elsewhere, sort of making these sounds, and we really need to echo that if we're going to keep up with the times. So even though that the corporate plan does, it mentions a sustainable recovery, which can be read in any which way. It does talk about a greener Folkestone and Hythe, but I think given that existential crisis that is now in common parlance, it's absolutely acknowledged, across sectors. Why we're only sort of saying, well, we want a greener Folkestone and Hythe. This is so much more, and this is about encouraging businesses and partnerships and our own activity to really reflect what that crisis is on this level as well. As local politicians, I think we really do have a responsibility, and this corporate plan just doesn't do that. So I won't be voting for it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Jim Martin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just a quick input from me. I too, like Councillor Davidson, have been looking at some of the responses, and lots and lots and lots of council taxpayers reference the point of the unbelievably high level of council tax in this borough when we compare the services that we receive from the amounts of money that we pay. And many of them, many of them blame this wholly on the pursuit of vanity projects. So I'll be voting against it, but I'm voting against it on behalf of the council taxpayers of the district.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wimble.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm astonished at what Councillor Martin and Davison Treloar are saying. Ever since they've been on this council, Councillor Treloar was the person who put forward this green agenda. We backed it as a council. All of us, not one single councillor didn't back this. We put £10 million towards our green, our bid to try and get a green council. I think that people who may not have voted or like the idea of Otterpool Park maybe didn't understand the millions of pounds it will bring into this council to enable better things for the whole district. And they probably, like myself, when I joined the council, I didn't realise that we're being forced by government to build over 800 houses a year, every year for the next 18 years. Otterpool Park is the one solution to this that will stop you having houses built on the greens at Hive. It will stop you having houses built all the way along Prince's Parade, right the way to the Hive Imperial. It's a get out. It's not something that's a vanity project. It's going to bring millions and millions of pounds to the whole district. And yes, it makes me very angry to hear somebody like Georgina Treloar saying that we don't care about the Green Initiative. Our council is more behind that than any other council that I know of in the southeast of England anyway. So I'm sorry if I sound angry, but I certainly will be supporting this, and I suggest that others do the same.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mead.
Thank you, Chair. I think the point that Councillor Treloar was making was that the items within the corporate plan, especially as it's going over 10 years, are looking dated already, and they need to be brought up to date with the breaking news and information that's going on. I would ask councillors, please, to remember that this corporate plan has been put together on behalf of our residents, on behalf of our taxpayers in the local area. We've asked that 3 little words be removed because we know the strength of feeling regarding that particular area. There is also very strong, I won't call it anti, but not impressed, shall we say, and I'm not calling it a vanity project, but not impressed with the plans for Otterpool Park. And we have to remember that we, as a council, even though certain people voted against it, have agreed to borrow £100 million. Now, this is going to be done over the next 30 years. So yes, it's included in the corporate plan. But what I'm not seeing is what is for our residents right now. The people that are paying the tax right now. And yes, Councillor Wimble, I can understand that you're angry round the edges, but we need to see in the corporate plan things for our residents now that they can benefit from. And there are not enough things in there. And yet we're asking them to agree along with us as their representatives for things that are so far in the future that they will not see benefit from for about 10, 20, 30 years, and yet they've been expected to pay for it now. So I'm sorry, as a representative of one of the poorest wards in the country, I'm sorry, I cannot agree with this at the moment. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Godfrey. You're on mute, councillor. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I'd lost my mouse again. It's very elusive. I'm just a bit gobsmacked, actually. I think this is an excellent corporate plan. I think it looks to the future, and by looking at the future will benefit those in the present, but only by being bold and adventurous can we actually generate the incomes that enable us to do even bigger and better things for the areas that Councillor Mead's talking about. And also, I look at page 14, and I'm not quite sure what's not green enough, to be honest, because it starts off with saying we by 2030 will be recognised as an outstanding place and known as a green exemplar council. And it finishes by saying, and the council itself will generate net zero carbon emissions. I mean, to me, that's a very strong statement, and it shows our commitment to the climate change policy. So I'm going to very much support this, and I'm have no bound. I've always supported Princess Parade because I think the people of Hythe have suffered long enough on this debate. I don't believe that the majority of them are necessarily against it. And I think the benefits of that wonderful new swimming pool overlooking the ocean and the green open space and the income that it will generate to develop that are well worth the money. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Hollingsby.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Well, I'd just like to follow Councillor Goddard, actually. To be honest, this plan, this corporate plan, was a cross-party document apart from those 3 words. So I'm quite gobsmacked to hear some of the comments when one assumed that we were all representing our groups. You know, the corporate plan working group has met cross-political all the time, and the only thing I understood was where we were perhaps differing were the 3 words. So I'm a little bit gobsmacked.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Rolfe.
Thank you, Chair. I've listened intently to all of the views that have been presented, and some very eloquent, albeit rather different approaches to this particular document. As I see it, it's a blueprint, an overall blueprint for the development of the area over a number of years. It's a top layer strategic overview of what needs to be done across the whole of the district to raise the quality of life for residents, businesses within the area, and hopefully encourage more people to come and to highlight what a lovely district we live in. Certain threads, for example, the green agenda, as I put it, run through that whole document, and it does create a vision for the future, where that element of we need to be more sustainable, etc. It underpins a lot of the initiatives. So I do feel it is very much embedded in this document, and nothing, you can't create something that's perfect. I mean, we're all human. So it is basically a consensus of ideas that's come forward, but I think it's a very good one. And I would like to say it's something that you're creating we're looking to the future. We want to keep our young people living here and working here and playing here. And if you hand this out to some school students, I'm sure they would say, wow, this awesome, or whatever or that's sick, or whatever they're going to say, because there's some amazing things. And whether you just agree or not with Otterpool, the actual vision for it is to create something very special, green exemplar particularly, within the area. And I think it's very exciting, and I just wish that we could all actually come together and say, okay, there may be 2 or 3 words that some of us may not agree with, but the bigger picture, and please look at the bigger picture, is you're creating a very beautiful image of what this this district will be like in 10, 20 or 30 years time. And the devil will be in the detail, I know, but that is a different layer to this, and that is what can be worked on as we go forward and take out those projects or whatever they are and look at them and analyse them in detail. That's how I see it. Top level strategic. Let's all try and vote for this one. It's a good one.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wade.
Thank you, Chair. And again, coming after Councillor Rolfe, I do respect very often her contributions and her thoughtful contribution in this respect. Certainly looking at the larger picture is important, and we have to see where the whole council is headed, what we're trying to achieve. Unfortunately, this particular corporate plan, as has been noted, will not be a popular plan for the people of this district. Otterpool is not popular, and Prince's Parade, the desecration there, will not be popular if it goes ahead. I do take on board what Councillor Wimble has pointed out, that we are instructed by central government to build hundreds of houses every year, and that Otterpool is a kind of get out for this. However, there are ways of doing this that if we genuinely had the commitment to green exemplar, if we genuinely had that commitment that the buildings would be carbon neutral, and a plan and an explanation of how that would be doing, perhaps it would be more popular, but I don't see that, unfortunately. Similarly, Councillor Wimble raises the issue that you invest money in order to get more money so you can pay for services. But as Councillor Martin has pointed out, those services are not what our residents would expect. The destruction of Prince's Parade, do we really want to spend money for that? And what about the children in Councillor Mead's ward? 1/3 of all the children in our district are living in poverty now. That's a shocking statistic. I don't see a remedy for that in this plan. If we're going to invest these large amounts of money and do very unpopular things in order to get money to pay for services, we ought to be doing something about the inadequate housing, about the children living in poverty. And we ought not to be spending that money on deeply unpopular and stupid projects like destroying Prince's Parade. I do respect the work the council officers have done on this, and I do see many good things, as Councillor Godfrey has pointed out. There are good things in this plan. I should have been more sympathetic if the leader had agreed to Councillor Prater's amendment earlier regarding eliminating the highly controversial and ridiculous commitment to destroying Prince's Parade. But in the absence of those things, I'm afraid I cannot support this plan.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hills.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've heard the debate with some interest. My instincts are to support Councillor Rolfe in this, her views, which I think are pretty well balanced. I think it's sad that Councillor Treloar takes this opportunity to whack the district on their green issues. We know it's going to get tough. We have to make ourselves more resilient. We have to adapt. And basically, the EA are committed to defend our coastline for the next generation. So nothing's going to happen in the very near future. But we can make a big difference now by mitigating the long distance future. We should be doing that. Kent is leading the way in this on its own estate. I mean, you've got to make every effort to do that. But let's be honest with ourselves. It's a worldwide problem. We can do our best in our district. It's a worldwide problem. Now, this plan, I think, is good for the district. And it does say on page 33, it'll be thoroughly reviewed in 2024, which is only 3 years away. So it's not as if it's burnt in, hammered in stone. It will be updated. And Councillor Treloar can rest assured, as our guidance changes, so will we do as time goes by. I take on board her concerns, but making wide accusations, I think, is a silly thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hills. We'll now go to the vote.
Madam Chairman, I do get to sum up.
Did somebody else wish to speak? Well, Councillor Gary
Fuller.
Fuller wish to speak.
Apologies, Chairman.
Apologies, Councillor Fuller.
Not to
Okay.
worry, Chair. It was a bit of a last-minute thing. I've listened to the debate. It's it's been interesting, but at its core, for me, it's always been about those three words. And yes, they're three shortish words, not very important seeming, but they were important enough that a quarter of all the councillors in this district were elected on the back of opposing them. The thousands of people that voted Green and voted Lib Dem in Hive and Sandgate did so on a common thread. They don't want Prince's Parade. They've never wanted it. They never will want it. It would be lovely to say they haven't realised the benefits or any of this. They don't want it, and they're never going to want it. And being bullish about this and ignoring the people and ignoring the other groups on the council and just hoping that they'll all come into line at some point is a waste of effort. And for the sake of getting rid of those three words, we could have shaved a good half an hour off this meeting, and we could have actually had something really collegiate and agreeable to everyone. But we didn't get that, and that's where we are. So I'll be voting against.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Monk, would you like to sum up?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, again, I will say I'm disappointed because the actual process that we went to arrive at this corporate plan, I thought went well. I thought that we actually every point along the way we went back to our groups and we discussed it with our groups, and I know it was discussed in the other groups, and it came back and input was put in, and we took an account of that input. And we came up with what is, I think, a fairly rounded document. Now, if we take Councillor Trelaw's point, I think we are a Green Council, and I think that I say that it is our primary policy is a green policy. So everything that we do is balanced against that, and it does run through the document. When we talk, the one thing I can't argue with is that the survey only gave 17% to Otterpool Park. And then you ask yourself, well, and I do ask myself, why? Well, what does Otterpool Park mean to the normal resident? Unless they want a house, it's not going to mean a lot to them probably. But that is a job for another day. I don't think it in any way invalidates this corporate plan. Yeah, so I as I say, I'm slightly disappointed. I believe that even if those three words are taken out from what I'm hearing tonight, there would have been a lot of opposition to that, and that saddens me because we tried to get a consensus. That's all I've got to say, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Monk. We'll now go to the vote, please, Gemma.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Mrs Berry.
4.
Councillor Brooke.
4.
Councillor Miss Carey.
4.
Councillor Collier.
4.
Councillor Davison.
Against.
Councillor Field.
4.
Councillor Fuller.
Against.
Councillor Goddard.
4.
Councillor Godfrey.
4.
Councillor Hills.
4.
Councillor Mrs Hollingsby.
4.
Councillor Keane.
Against.
Councillor Cutenius.
Against.
Councillor Jim Martin.
Against.
Councillor Philip Martin.
4.
Councillor McConville.
Against.
Councillor Mead.
Against.
Councillor Mayers.
4.
Councillor Monk.
4.
Councillor Mullard. Councillor Mullard.
Are you
Four.
on mute? Thank you.
4.
Councillor Peel
4.
and Councillor Prater.
Against.
Councillor Rolfe.
4.
Councillor Shue.
Against.
Councillor Trelaw.
Against.
Councillor Wade.
Against.
Councillor Whitebrow.
Against.
Councillor Wimble.
4.
Councillor Wing.
Against.
I make that 16 in favour and 13 against.
So that's carried. Thank you, councillors. Move to the next item, item 8. General Fund Budget and Council Tax 2021 to 22, pages 49 to 74. Are we a proposer?
Madam Chairman, I would like to propose that we accept the recommendations of Report A/20/08. This is the budget for the council for the next financial year. I strongly recommend it to all councillors. I'm very pleased to say that we've managed to come up with a balanced budget in these difficult and straitened times. Without a doubt, the officers have helped. They've searched hard and found a lot of savings, which has helped. The government has given us a fair amount of money, not enough, of course, but a fair amount of money. And we've managed to balance it with some small, relatively small withdrawals from our reserves. We could have pushed harder on the things. We've gone for the 1.99 tax increase. Some people say we shouldn't do it this time. If you look at our medium-term financial strategy, we would be foolhardy not to take any money at this time, remembering that if we don't take it this time, by 5 years' time, we've lost literally 5 times that out of our overall budget, and we are going to be struggling. So we have made one big concession, and that is not to put up car parking charges, so that it will help the recovery from the COVID with our retail operations. So, as I say, I think this is a very, very good budget. There are a lot of councils up and down the country that like to produce a budget like this, and I commend it to councillors. Thank you.
Have you a seconder, Councillor Monk?
Happy to second, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, we're open to debate now, please, councillors. No one wishing to speak? Okay, we'll take the vote, please.
Oh, Councillor Prater, sorry. I think Councillor Prater was indicating the Mr.
Oh, he is now, yeah, sorry, it wasn't there. Councillor Prater.
Thank you, Chairman. No, I left that late because I thought somebody might want to speak on the annual budget of the council, and I genuinely wasn't going to not have any councillor do so apart from Councillor Monk. Last year, I said that although I accepted the broad shape of the budget, I thought that we really needed to look at the issue which led this council to having the highest council tax, band for band, in Kent. I still think that that's the case, but that was in February 2020, and then COVID hit. And for those of us that have been following the budget monitoring of this council and also other councils nationally, COVID has had a devastating impact on council budgets in the last 11 months. Income from things like parking has crashed. There have been big extra costs of things like supporting the COVID hubs, supporting local people, improving what with services that we've been offering the homeless, dealing with the impact of lockdown and then the impact of opening up again and more. There has been some government support, but it hasn't covered all lost income. And the council kept working throughout. No staff were furloughed. They were all needed, and councils actually aren't allowed to furlough staff. But they had to change from delivering services in the way that they always did before from an office to working from home. And they had to do it instantly. They had to do it while supporting new people in extraordinary ways. It wasn't the time to spend time looking at the base budget at that moment. Some councils have been devastated financially by COVID. You're seeing more councils in distress across the country, and I suspect we're going to see more of those. The financial position of this council meant that when the budget process started in autumn, the initial projections showed using reserves at a rate of millions of pounds a year, reserves that would be gone really quickly. Even now, the budget for this year, including the projected 1.99% council tax rise, shows the use of reserves. It's not actually a balanced budget because it's partially funded by reserves that have been previously banked. Now, there were options. You could try and cut as much expenditure by cutting services as you could to cut that loss. You could vote through big increases to fees and charges and big cuts to services to balance those things off. There were proposals like that put forward, and I absolutely couldn't have supported to them. And to be fair, they haven't been taken up. Or you could put forward a budget that does use some reserves and does protect the key expenditure and the frontline services. It's not perfect. And there are some areas that I'm sure could be better. But overall, it's the lesser of the evils. It's the lesser of the positions there. There's still the question to be scrutinised on our comparative band-for-band council tax across the county. And we should do that. But again, to be fair, I'm afraid the last 11 months have not been the time to do that. So sometimes in unusual circumstances, you need to do unusual things. I'm not sure I've ever voted for a Conservative led budget before. But this has been an unusual year, a terrible year. And in recognition of that, the better of two routes, I think, has been picked on this budget. So I'll vote for the revenue budget.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm disappointed, bearing in mind Harbour Ward, the ward I represent, ranks as one of the 12 most deprived in Kent. They're paying higher rates of tax, council tax, than areas in Tunbridge Wells and Sevenoaks. And during a period of worldwide pandemic, we're asking one of the poorest wards in Folkestone to finance projects like Otterpool, the castle, the racecourse, and in return, this area once again gets nothing, absolutely nothing. Could we not look, especially in a ward like Harbour and East, these wards are where the people have lost the most jobs, that are most furloughed and the most deprived, and we're asking them to rack up some more money. Where do we seriously think that money's coming from?
Thank you, Councillor Keane. Everybody? Okay.
Oh, no, it's Councillor Carey.
Sorry, Councillor Carey, please.
Yes, sorry, I just wanted to say something in response to the last speech, because I think we all need to remember that this council provides services that are most needed by the most vulnerable in the district. And that is the reason why we need to protect services through taking this council tax rise. We do have a high level of council tax compared with other districts. It's an inheritance from the dreadful administration of the Liberal Democrats when they were in charge of this council that we have still not managed to recoup the situation from, but we are where we are. And I would like to actually emphasise that there is help for people who are unable to who are struggling with their council tax. There has been, over a number of years, there's a hardship fund. There are all sorts of categories where people are entitled to reductions, and there is more money going into these hardship funds. And of course, there is an automatic reduction for those on council tax credits of £50 overall on the council tax bill from the Kent proportion. So that's going to come anyway. So I think the people who would have been most impacted by this have actually got a cushion. But if we're serious about offering services, we have to look at providing the financing of them. And the point has been made, and made well, that if you don't take the council tax raise now, it's actually a cumulative deficit. And looking ahead, people in Harbour Ward, people in all wards will benefit from projects such as Otterpool Park, because they provide social housing, they'll provide income to support services and improvements for many years to come. Other councils do not have such a project. We are in a very good place to be for the future, and I find it sad that some councillors don't actually seem to understand just how valuable Otterpool Park is to each and every resident in the district, but particularly to those who need an affordable home, who need a first foot on the ladder. But in terms of what will happen to people who find themselves in difficulty paying council tax, there is help there. And I know our officers do a really good job in actually supporting people when they have trouble in this way. So I don't think we should hold back on supporting this budget for that reason. I think every effort has been made, and there are suitable provisions in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fuller.
Thank you, Chair. God, talk about flogging a dead horse. I don't even know any of the Lib Dems that were in charge in 2003, but whatever. Anyway, back to the point at hand. It's pretty clear that since 2010, the public finances have been cut to the bone. They've kept cutting, and they've cut until they can't take it anymore. Then we've had a global pandemic thrown at us, which has shown us exactly how screwed our public sector really is, no matter how much we might like to gloss over it and clap for carers and so on. We've completely neglected our public sector, and in the process we've allowed those that accrue wealth simply for the fun of it to accrue more wealth. Against that backdrop, there's really only one thing we as a council can do, and that's to survive as best we can. And the only lever, unfortunately, we've got to pull to balance the books and try and help the people that actually deserve it and need it, in the absence of a government that's actually going to restore the public sector and maybe tax the people that can actually afford to be taxed. The only lever we've got at the moment is council tax, and obviously the bit of reserves that we're taking as well. So I don't like it. I hate it. I hate the idea of the people that can least afford it having to pay for what should be everyone's recovery and what everyone should be contributing towards. But it's the only option we've got. And therefore I have to reluctantly take it. So I will be voting for the budget. But I would very much like to see off the back of that, every councillor, every council leader in the country haranguing our Prime Minister and our government and telling them to actually put the public sector back on a strong footing, and to do it off the back of taxes from people that can actually afford to pay. But that's an argument for another day, shall we say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Councillor Mead.
Thank you, Chair. We've only just started to see the real result of the COVID pandemic. Yes, we've had lots of losses, unfortunately, and people have become ill. But what we're not seeing truly yet is the amount of people who have lost their jobs, that are having to cut their hours because their employers can't afford them anymore. What I'm asking is that we hold an increase this year. We have reserves. We spent 3 million on a castle. We've borrowed 100 million. We know our residents are really suffering at the moment. Give them a chance over the next year to get back on their feet. Allow the businesses to get back on their feet before we go, actually, no, we want some more. We want some more now, even when you're on your knees. So unfortunately for this, and I would say, if I may, Councillor Prater, I found your approach to reserves quite interesting, because it was, I believe, completely different at Folkestone Town Hall. But that's for another day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wade?
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yes, there's a debate in post-colonial theory, I'm sure Councillor Kerry is aware of it, as to how many years previously colonised nations can continue to blame their woes on the colonialists who left many decades previously. I'm accustomed to these spurious baths being thrown. The Tories have been running things long enough, and the situation in Councillor Mead's ward, at Reachfields, at Lydd, at other places in our district is still not tolerable. The services are not good enough, particularly for those 1/3 of children living in poverty. However, I will support this plan. I think, as Councillor Prater has said, the correct approach has been taken. I just hope that when or if the money from these enormous investments comes in, that it will be spent wisely to help those people who at the moment do not get a fair share. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Davison?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I felt a need to respond to Councillor Carey's wishing to respond to Councillor Mead. I think it's the approach of jam tomorrow has worn out completely. Residents are in crisis and in need at the moment. And I know that many councillors in the meeting tonight have spent time working at the community hubs over the last year. And if you've done that, you will know the calls that come into the hubs from residents who do not have food to eat, who need emergency food provision, from residents who can't afford to top up their gas and heat their homes. And these are not fantasy things. These are calls that are coming in day after day that we are having to address in our district and our community. So it isn't the time to be looking to our residents to pay more through a system that isn't fair. Council tax is not a fair system because it's not based on people's ability to pay. And one point just in relation to what Councillor Monk said about not putting up parking charges, other fees and charges have been put up if people look at those. Particularly, I draw people's attention to the bulky waste household collection charges, which have gone up from £25 to £30 for collection of an item. And that's prohibitive for people. And we see the results of that around the streets of Folkestone all the time. Sofas dumped, other things dumped, because people can't afford to pay that money. So that is another retrograde step. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Jim Martin?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Yeah, again, just an appeal. I acknowledge everything that everyone has said, and as Councillor Davidson pointed out, many of us have worked at food banks and done deliveries, particularly over Christmas, to the poorest people in our wards. But yet again, it seems to me that the burden has been placed on Mr. and Mrs. Average, who are going to shoulder the responsibility of this hike in council tax. And, you know, as others have said this evening, you know, there's this is jam tomorrow. Everything's going to be okay so long as you pay today. And, you know, particularly people in my ward are getting worn out by the constant increases in council tax with, and I'm quoting them, an ever declining level in public services. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Catenius.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to voice that I will be voting against this. I am very grateful for the officers and the staff and everything they've done over this period and coming up with this budget, but I cannot countenance asking the poorest and those who have suffered some of the worst in this district to pay that burden. I cannot do it in all good conscience.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Monk.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, there we go. I did expect Councillor Prater to be speaking because I had heard him speak just a few hours earlier at Cabinet, and he put things so eloquently. It's quite a pleasure to listen to him. But he basically covered the things. Now, I only take one exception with him. Reserves are there to use when you've got a rainy day, and if we haven't got a rainy day now, I don't know when we're ever going to have one. And it is perfectly legitimate to use reserves to balance your budget, because that's how it balances, because you've taken some money out of the reserve to balance it. I'm slightly the poor. I am not a nasty man. I don't impose these things to hurt the poor. There are people in our society who can't pay their council tax. We do have, as Councillor Kerry says, we do have a lot of systems in place to try and catch them. What collectively, though, all of those that have said that it is unfair, one actually, Councillor Davidson actually said, well, the problem is it's an unfair tax. I can't but disagree with you that it's an unfair tax. A tax that's based on what property you've got seems to be most peculiar. There was an effort to get a poll tax where per person paid it, and then adjustments made to their ability to pay, but that was kicked out of touch. So yeah, I can't disagree with you that the system is bad, but nobody has come up with a system that I can use to raise the revenue that I need. So again, no propositions have come forward as to doing anything different to the way we do it now. And I'll ask you to think about that and perhaps come up with some in the future. I could only go back and say, I think that I will take exception with Councillor Martin, Jim Martin, that is about declining services. I think our services have palpably improved over the past few years, and I really don't recognise what he's talking about, and using things like tax hike are just inflammatory, and there's no necessity. I've explained why we are doing it. It's perfectly legitimate, and others have accepted that the rationale behind it is sensible. We have to balance our budget, and I believe that this is a good balanced budget that gives us a breathing space, because if we've got to look to the year after next year, that's going to be the real crunch time. That's when if we haven't got a way of tapping into our future potential, we're going to have trouble. So I really do recommend this budget to you. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Monk. We'll go to the vote, and this vote needs to be recorded as it's for the general fund budget and council tax.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Mrs Berry.
4.
Councillor Brooke.
4.
Councillor Miss Carey.
4.
Councillor Collier.
4.
Councillor Davison.
Against.
Councillor Field.
4.
Councillor Fuller.
With a heavy heart, 4.
Councillor Goddard.
4.
Councillor Godfrey.
4.
Councillor Hills.
4.
Councillor Mrs Hollingsby.
4.
Councillor Keane.
Against.
Councillor Cutenius.
Against.
Councillor Jim Martin.
4.
Councillor Philip Martin.
4.
Councillor McConville.
Against.
Councillor Mead.
Against.
Councillor Mayers.
4.
Councillor Monk.
4.
Councillor Mullard.
4.
Councillor Peel.
4.
Councillor Prater.
4.
Councillor Rolfe.
4.
Councillor Shube.
4.
Councillor Trelaw.
4.
Councillor Wade.
4.
Councillor Wybrow.
4.
Councillor Wimble.
4.
Councillor Wing.
4.
I make that 24 in favour and 5 against.
Right, that's carried. Thank you, councillors. We move on now to the next item, item 9, housing revenue, account revenue and capital original budget. Can I have a proposer for this, please?
Thank you, Chair.
Is it Councillor Godfrey, is it?
Councillor Godfrey, yes, I'd like to propose the recommendations in report A2109 and I would like to speak.
Thank you, councillor. Have you got a seconder?
Madam Chairman, I'm pleased to second.
Thank you, councillor Monk. Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you, Chair. As councillors will recall, we took over the housing service, our own housing service, back into in-house on the 1st of October. And we've been working hard to improve the services. Councillors will be aware that we are actually, and I need us to bear this in mind, that we're in the process of doing a stock survey of all of our properties. And we have a very ambitious new build programme to resolve some of the issues with the shortage of social housing in the district. So this is part of the budget. This budget will help us achieve that. It will also help us meet, as I know people want to hear, our green agenda, because in all of what we're doing in our new build programme, we are now incorporating the best methods and trying to analyse the best ways of actually reaching carbon zero. And we will be doing the same when we look at our existing stock, although that's a much harder job, as people can imagine, but it's embedded in our thinking. So I would recommend this report and I would ask you to support it. Although we don't like to increase things in finances, as you've just heard, it's the increases we're proposing in line with government guidelines, which is CPI plus 1%, which is 1.5%, equaling 1.27 pence per week, £1.27 a week. The increases in service charges follow the same calculation. Councils do have the opportunity to actually increase above those for sheltered housing, but we've taken the decision not to do that, and we will be working through what our costs and heating costs are going forward over the next few months. So I would ask you to support this and vote for it, please. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Anybody wishing to speak? No? Okay, we go to the vote then, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Mrs Berry.
For.
Councillor Brooke.
4.
Councillor Miss Carey.
4.
Councillor Collier.
4.
Councillor Davison.
Abstain.
Councillor Field.
4.
Councillor Fuller.
4.
Councillor Goddard.
4.
Councillor Godfrey.
4.
Councillor Hills.
4.
Councillor Mrs Hollingsby.
4.
Councillor King.
Abstain.
Councillor Cutelius.
Abstain.
Councillor Jim Martin.
4.
Councillor Philip Martin.
4.
Councillor McConville.
Abstain.
Councillor Mead.
Abstain.
Councillor Mayers.
4.
Councillor Monk.
4.
Councillor Mullard.
4.
Councillor Peel.
4.
Councillor Prater.
4.
Councillor Rolfe.
4.
Shube.
4.
Councillor Trelaw.
4.
Councillor Wade.
4.
Councillor Wybrow.
4.
Councillor Wimble.
4.
And Councillor Wing.
4.
So there's 24 in favour and 5 abstentions.
Thank you, councillors. That's carried. We move to the next item, item 10. Update to the General Fund, Medium-Term Capital Programme and Budget Monitoring 2020 to 2021, pages 89 to 108. Councillor Monk.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to recommend the recommendations on report A20/06. Thank you.
Have you a seconder?
Happy to second, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsby. Meeting's now open to debate. Anyone wishing to speak? Councillor Prater.
At 10 to 9, I will delight councillors by saying this is the last time I'm planning on speaking this evening. I'd like to move an amendment that I have previously notified to officers, and that's that the following recommendation be inserted as recommendation 2, and that subsequent recommendations are renumbered. That the Prince's Parade Leisure and Housing Development future allocated budget of 28.358 million be deleted, and that a future capital programme considers the required budget for a leisure centre on an alternative site, probably at Martello Lakes. Yes, for those suffering a little from deja vu, this is pretty much exactly the same amendment I tabled to the capital programme last year, and it has the same intention as the motion supported by this council in June 2019. It removes the funding from the Prince's Parade Development Scheme. It instead requires the consideration of an alternative location for a new swimming pool and leisure centre for Hythe, probably at Martello Lakes. We support the development of a new leisure facilities for Hythe. We support the replacement of Hythe Pool, just not at Prince's Parade. I won't read you the same speech as last year, although having read it myself today, it was very good, and it is tempting. However, all the reasons I gave then for the amendment still hold true now. The development of Prince's Parade does damage to our environment. It harms the setting of one of our most important scheduled ancient monuments, the Royal Military Canal. It threatens our wildlife and our ecology, and it exposes this council to a huge financial risk. And it's not a few new buildings. It's 150 houses, a hotel, a leisure centre, a 1.5 acre surface water attenuation pond, and the rerouting of the existing road away from the seafront nearer the canal. And if we've learned anything out of the last year, It should be that we should be valuing the areas of open space and wildlife that we have in our community. Sometimes you just can't drive somewhere to have a walk. If we've learned anything else in this year, it should be that there is significant risk in big projects like this, that things change. There's a wealth of evidence to suggest that Prince's Parade development is going to be more risky and expensive than costed, and it could blow a hole in this council's long-term financial position, while also still being the wrong thing to do. Abandoning the development of Prince's Parade now will have a material impact on the budget. We would have to write off some expenditure and seemingly cancel a contract. Yes, that's true. We would need to do those things, and we should. And the same would have been true last year, that we would have had cost to raise, and it remains true now. But to keep going and to put more money into it, then more would have to be written off in future if we change our mind then. There are still big hurdles to clear, from site investigations to detailed consents. Remember, we know from Sports England projections that I've given before that it's entirely possible to build a new centre, possibly bigger than that proposed at Prince's Parade, perfectly affordably elsewhere, such as at Martello Lakes. Many councillors will have seen emails from Save Prince's Parade with reports from the Environment Agency saying the drainage scheme was just about viable. The independent design consultants from this council saying that the rerouting of the road at Prince's Parade potentially creates as many problems as it solves. We can do better than this, and we can make it happen again this evening. Leave Prince's Parade alone. Please support the amendment and remove Prince's Parade from the medium-term capital programme. I hope I have a seconder.
Have you a seconder, Councillor?
Yes, I will second, and I reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Right. Open to debate now, please. Councillor Mullard.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. In principle, I'm content to leave the swimming pool complex at Prince's Parade. It will be convenient for Folkestone and Hythe, obviously, and places like the Shorncliffe developments. It will even be slightly accessible for people living on Martello Lakes and its sister Martello Park. Having said that, the Prince's Parade swimming pool is not really accessible for people way down on the marsh. So in summary, I will support, or at least I will support, continue to support the development at Prince's Parade with a proviso. And that little proviso is that somewhere in the future, the council will look to developing a swimming pool or a complex at somewhere like New Romney, which will serve Romney, the marsh people. Also, it makes those two swimming complexes fairly evenly balanced and evenly accessible. So, yeah, you know, you can't please everybody all the time. You can please somebody some of the time. The people that with the Prince's Parade pool, it will please the people in Folkestone, Hythe. It won't necessarily please the people in my ward and further down in the marsh, but I'm happy to go along with it as it remains and hopefully see a development later on in, let's say, New Romney. That's it, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Monk.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, this is the crunch time. It's been a long, long time coming. I believe in the vision that we have for Prince's Parade. I do understand some of the concerns. Somebody sent me a calendar today with views that they said would be ruined. In fact, when you go through the calendar, nearly all of them are of the canal. We aren't touching the canal. The north of the canal will remain as it is, absolutely. The vision is to make it a destination to come to with a vehicle-free promenade. I still stand by what I believe it to be, and for Councillor Prater to try and imply that our solutions for drainage are just about adequate. The fact of the matter, this has been tested to death in the courts and has cost us nearly 2 years in time to go forward with it. And I just ask you to vote against this amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Jim Martin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thought I had to speak. Just to remind members before we start that I polled more votes than anybody in this chamber. So I have a very clear mandate. People don't talk to me about a great deal other than saving Princess Parade. So how, for example, Councillor Godfrey could earlier say that he was convinced that the majority of people in Hythe were in favour, he is so completely wrong. All you have to do is look around this Zoom meeting. There are 6 Green councillors that probably wouldn't have our seats except for Princess Parade. There would have been no reason for anyone to vote for me except for Princess Parade. I add to that 7,000 signatures on a petition, 700 planning objections, written planning objections. Otterpool hasn't got that many. I would also just point out the vote that we had in this chamber to abandon the project, which was ignored by the Cabinet. And just as Councillor Monk has raised it, I will quote the nearly £90,000 that local people contributed to take the council to judicial review. So the people of Hythe have not only voted against this repeatedly, but they've also put their hand in their pocket to try and stop it. So, you know, I'm happy to listen to any of the discussion this evening, but please don't try and convince me that the people of Hythe are in favour of the development of Princess Parade. The other thing that I would say, as this is all about the budget, we are at, as the leader has so eloquently said, we are at the crunch point. This is it. The thing that has protected Princess Parade over all of the attempts to develop it in the past has been the contamination. Now, the council has, I understand, entered a pre-contract services agreement with BAM, a Dutch company, to carry out the investigations and design of the leisure centre. And this will be the acid test. So it will depend on the nature, the extent and the impact of the contamination on the site that will determine whether or not this project goes forward. And I, for one, am awaiting with bated breath. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you, Chair. If I said the majority of the people of Hythe were for it, I don't recall saying that. I say there's no evidence that that the majority of people are against it, frankly, because you never hear from the silent majority. However, I stand by my belief that this will be an asset to Hythe. I stand by my belief that in a few years' time, people will be grateful to see it there, and that the use of the promenade and as a place to go, it will be beneficial to Hythe. And I will continue to, I would have to oppose this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wybrow.
Thank you. I just wanted to pick up, first of all, a couple of points that Councillor Monk has made. First of all, he said that the canal won't be affected. So I just wanted to quote from the Design Southeast report that Councillor Prater mentioned that was sent to us all by the chair of Save Princess Parade. They say that the realignment of the road brings an intrusive roadway close to the scheduled ancient monument, which is obviously the canal. And then they go on to say the character of this site is of a vibrant seafront and a quiet canal area. The realignment proposal does not respect that character. So I think it's not fair to say that the canal will not be affected, because it will be dramatically affected. And the other thing you can't ignore is the height of the buildings that are going to be built right next to it, which will block the view completely from the canal to the sea and vice versa. He also talked about how all the surface water flooding arrangements have been tested in the court. That's not my understanding of what the judicial review was about. My understanding that judicial reviews are about the planning process, not the planning decision itself, and certainly not about the flood water arrangements. Now, on the 14th of January, Councillor Martin and Councillor Treloar joined me in a meeting with Councillor Godfrey and the relevant officers, because we wanted to raise some very serious questions with them on behalf of residents about things like the contamination and the surface water flood mechanisms and so forth. And we were promised a response to our queries, but we're still waiting for those queries. Now, I've been told on many occasions that officers don't have to give councillors all the information that we ask for. Whether or not that's the case, I don't think that means that we can't be provided with that information. And when local residents have genuine concerns about issues such as contamination and surface water flooding, I believe it's my duty to keep asking those questions and to seek detailed answers. I also believe that it's my duty as a councillor to make sure that I have all the information I need before making a decision. So such as the decision that we're being asked to make tonight. We're being asked to approve a capital budget which includes over £28 million for the Princess Parade project. But how many members here tonight can honestly say that they've been given enough information to understand the risks the council is exposing itself to? So, as Councillor Prater said, since the decision was made to go ahead with the project, the world has changed. For a large part of the past year, we've been unable to use indoor leisure centres, and our green open spaces have become even more vital for our physical and mental health. And so we just shouldn't be throwing this beautiful amenity away. We've all become much more aware of the importance of looking after the environment and climate change, and yet the proposed leisure centre has not even been designed to be zero. So I think, so in the light of these comments, I really don't understand from the comments from the Environment Agency and Design Southeast and others, I really don't understand how we've got as far as we have with this project, but it's not too late to turn back. It's not too late to take another look at Martello Lake. So I hope you will all support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Catenius.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to pick up on a couple of comments made by councillors throughout all of this evening. So I do apologise, I can't remember exactly who it was that said it, but there was the mention of how wonderful the swimming pool will be overlooking the sea. Well, unfortunately, if predictions with climate change are going to go the way they are, it won't be overlooking the sea, it'll be in the sea. And then also for Councillor Monk, it's cost us to death in court costs. That should show you the strength of feeling against this project. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is to admit that maybe you're wrong and admit that maybe, we've gone in the wrong direction on this. The Princess Parade project development is not wanted. The Princess Parade Leisure Centre is not wanted there. We need to have our open spaces, our green spaces, keep them free for people to use. It might not be long before we have another pandemic and swimming pools and leisure centres are off for another year or two. So please think about it again. Sometimes it's hard to admit you might be wrong, but you've got an opportunity here.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hollingsby.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Well, I don't know how to follow all of that actually, but somebody said, what have we learned this year? I would ask the same question. Judicial review, 3 attempts, the last attempt turned down. Places and policies, Princess Parade included, accepted. And as for people not wanting the swimming pool, I'm actually of the same opinion as Councillor Goddard. I mean, I can tell you from the primary schools in my area, Sellings Primary School, Stoughton Primary School, and other primary schools, they are desperate to have a new pool that they could go to in Hythe, easy access to Hythe. They actually currently one goes to Ashford and one goes to Canterbury. They're desperate, and what this has done, say Princess Parade Group have actually delayed providing a swimming pool for people in this area for 2 years. And I think it's time that defeat is accepted gracefully, that we actually all get together and work out what's the best way we can go forward with this swimming pool, how we can make it carbon neutral, because I know from the report that we had earlier, 58% of our carbon footprint comes from the Hythe swimming pool. So, and of course that will continue, but not to that extent. So I think we need to come together, yes, and actually work together to achieve the best we possibly can. I mean, who can say that that is a beautiful place? It's an waste site. It's not, it can't be used by anybody. If anybody's walking on it, they shouldn't be on it. It's private property. I just don't understand what is so beautiful about it. The scheme that we're proposing, or that has been proposed, provides quite a lot of open space for people to use, space that's been cultivated, and even the habitat will be, as I understand it, improved, or certainly won't be eliminated. So I'm just thinking, why on earth keep pushing at trying to stop it when we can get together now and do the best that we possibly can, all of us. Sorry, I get a bit passionate about these things, but I am very passionate about. I mean, the Hythe Swimming Pool Club, I know that they're very keen for the new swimming pool. The canoe centre along Princess Parade keep asking me when we're going to start. You know, there are a huge number of people who are looking forward to this, and in our North Downs West Ward as well, people are very keen to get a new swimming pool in Hythe.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wade.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, well, I think I can help Councillor Hollingsby. She says that she doesn't understand, and clearly she is telling the truth. I'll explain it to her. The reason that this area is so loved by the people of Hythe and Seabrook and Sandgate, people of Folkestone, is because it is a beautiful, tranquil, green space, full of nature. It's also a historic monument, and it was built in order that people should stand behind the canal and look over to the sea, so that when the Napoleonic troops were invading, they would be able to defend Hythe, Seabrook, Sandgate. That will be lost. The ecology will be destroyed. Councillor Hollingsby speaks about 2 years delay. Yes, there's been 2 years delay. We could have started at Martello Lakes, an appropriate site, 2 years ago. But there's been a stubborn lack of understanding. Yes, lack of understanding. Thank you, Councillor Hollingsby, for that phrase. You do not understand. The people of Hythe understand. People of Seabrook understand. The children at Seabrook Primary School understand extremely well. They do not want you to destroy this tranquil, beautiful space. I can't spell it out more clearly. There's no point in trying to put it in words of one syllable. The message is very clear. The ecology will be destroyed if you start pouring concrete all over it. The slow worms, the grass snakes that we love to see swimming in the canal, the bats who used to feed there, the light pollution will destroy their habitat. The kestrels that fly over there, much loved of people of Hythe, their habitat will be destroyed. We do not want that. So I hope I've explained this now and that people will no longer be able to say we do not understand.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Trelaw?
Thank you, Chair. Like Councillor Martin raised, you know, I was, you know, one of 3 councillors elected for Hythe, and a lot of that was to do with Prince's Parade. Now, since being elected, I'd like to think that, you know, as a Green as well, I'm a voice for people and planet locally for the residents of Hythe, the people of Hythe to enjoy their, you know, amenity space, and planet being the biodiversity that exists there, and the health of the canal. Now earlier, I mean, I'm in turn a little bit surprised at the faux outrage at my comments earlier on the corporate plan and foregrounding climate and ecology in this. And I think what it boils down to is you can't say you're green when you are waltzing on in and destroying such a valued habitat. So for me, this sticking point, until the council can talk that, you know, walk the walk as much as they talk the talk. You know, this is a micro. So Prince's Parade is like the microcosm of where we're at as a district and our whole approach to green issues. You cannot say you're a green council. You know, in my view, it's entire greenwashing if you have this piece of land susceptible to sea level rise because of climate change. It's host to a huge array of wildlife and biodiversity. And, you know, there are 2 crises, you know, climate and ecology, and, you know, and a well-being and social crisis as well. People need nature. We need these spaces. It's so important to people in our district. And so on one hand, you have councillors saying they cannot understand, you know, what is so valuable about this space. Is so telling why why I'm still not convinced we are where we need to be. And this is just a perfect example of that. And until, you know, I see people walking the walk as well in terms of Prince's Parade and going further as far as we possibly can and committing to, you know, genuinely sustainable measures for Otterpool, then I'm just not convinced. And you know, so I'm certainly supporting this amendment, unsurprisingly, but it just paints a picture, and it's just a sort of an alarm bell, really. You know, watch out for hypocrisy, watch out for greenwashing, because this is, you know, this is absolutely embodies the problem. If we can't, you know, retract this project in light of climate and ecology and the well-being of our people, then how, you know, how can we convincingly say that we're looking at those things across the rest of our operations and the rest of the district? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mead.
Thank you, Chair. This reminds me of the debate and the vote that we had last year, funny enough. So my piece, as I said then, is we need to save our green spaces, our ecological systems. They are so important to humans, and that has been proven so much over the last year during lockdown. We should not be encouraging putting roads near historic sites. That's outrageous, to be quite honest with you. But as Councillor Hollisby pointed out, I believe it was herself earlier, this used to be a waste tip. We know that hospital waste used to go in there. I'm hearing now, colloquially, people who used to sit there at night watching all the tipper lorries come in with all the asbestos in there. Nature has a wonderful way of enclosing and trying to stop this sort of waste from actually affecting things around it. We know that there is a crust on Prince's Parade. The minute we crack into that, we don't know what is going to come out. And I do remember Councillor Hollinsby saying last time, if we find asbestos, we will fix it. Well, I'm sorry, you can't fix it once it's up in the air. And we've got primary schools really close to there. And I am really worried. I want the green space. We need it. Our residents need the green space. But I'm also worried that if we go in there and we find asbestos, it's going to become the new Olympic Park. Do you remember that started? Oh, we're going to clear the site. It's going to cost £4 billion. 6 months later, when they start realising how much it's going to cost, it went up to 6, to 7, to 8, up to 9, which is why I take Councillor Martin's comments regarding this could break us, because once you start on there, you cannot stop. You have to make it safe. So I would suggest let's look at the Martello option and maybe use the other 20 odd million to maybe do up some of our existing housing stock, which we know is in poor state, and maybe not put up the poll tax for the people that can't afford it this time. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fuller.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the silent majority never speak except with when they speak with their votes. They speak with their judicial reviews, their petitions, their letters, their polls, and all of the many, many things and methods that have been used to try and speak to this council and try and get them to listen. Planning law's a mess. It's not very good at listening to people. We all know that. Even the judicial review system, it's just a way of trying to find a problem with the process. It's not about listening to people. And we need to listen to people. We need to listen to the people that oppose Princess Parade, because anyone who truly understands, anyone who stood there and felt the world almost disappear, as it were, from around you, that felt the quiet and the calm of that place, knows that it's a travesty that we might lose it. And it's a travesty that's involved a massive waste of time, a massive waste of money, when this whole thing could have been settled by simply doing what everybody thought we were going to do, which is build a swimming pool on Martello Lakes. And yes, lots of people in Hive do want a swimming pool, and they've got one. If only we go ahead and build one at Martello Lakes, because that's where it is meant to be. People have spent hours upon hours of time trying to get it through our fixed goals as a council that they don't want Princess Parade. It doesn't matter how many contracts you sign, how many holes you dig, how many Pandora's boxes you open that could cost us millions. People don't want it. And it's time that every councillor accepted that, because it's not going to go away the minute you dig a hole. It's just going to get worse. And frankly, people have had enough of it. I mean, we talk a good talk now. We're listening. We're becoming green. We're going to build great infrastructure. We're going to do massive projects like Utterpool Park that are going to benefit everyone. And yeah, you can sell Utterpool Park later on, but you're never going to sell anyone in Hive seriously on this project. You're never going to win people over. So yes, it is time to accept defeat. It's time this council accepted defeat and actually listened to the people that elect it about what they want. And that's what I urge everyone to do tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Chair. Mine's more of a question than anything else. Why are we arguing over where this swimming pool needs to go? I agree with Councillor Cutenius. It will be in the sea. If it's going to be there, it won't be there for long. 30 years, aren't they saying, and the sea's going to come up? Why are we making such an issue of it's got to go on Prince's Parade? Why can it not go on Martello? You know, it just seems to me that we've come to a point pushing and pulling. The people of Hythe do not want Prince's Parade. So, you know, we've got to live with that. They don't want it. But why can't we just put that swimming pool and not give them any more delay? Give them what they want and put it where people seem to want it, on the Martello Lakes.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wimble.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've written down so many notes here, I'm not even going to have a chance to go through all of them. Certain things have been said about the risk of the council exposing itself to the beautiful amenity. I love Prince's Parade. I take my dog down all the time, walk along the seafront there, past the golf course. When you get to the park we're looking to develop, you can't go on there. It's nothing but brambles and it's a waste site. You can, however, walk along the canal, which you're still going to be able to do. But not only will you be able to walk along the canal, you're going to be able to, one end of it, the golf course end, go to a beautiful countryside park as well. There's so much to talk about hypocrisy. You know, you don't have to talk to me about hypocrisy when you got councillors driving around in V8 Range Rovers and things like that. That's hypocrisy. Kestrels will still fly there. They've still got the canal there. We're not going near the canal. The road will run alongside it, as it does do all the way along the canal from Rye to Appledore. You know, there's nothing happens there. We've had talk tonight about amenities and what we spend our money on. Oh, we don't want to have Otterpool Park, but we want amenities that people can use. Well, this is an amenity. We're offering it to you. Why have it there? Easy. The council own the land. Yes, Otterpool Park, we have a bit of land to build a swimming pool now. I think we've got to pay the pricey sum of £1. But where are you going to raise the money to actually pay for the pool? The money for the pool comes from the selling of the houses. It comes from the building of the hotel and the coffee shops and things like that. It's, again, an amenity. I was on the council not the last time before, when we had all of this about Fisherman's Beach, about how it's going to ruin Hythe and people didn't want it. The same with the Hythe Imperial and the flats there. The person who was leading the campaign for that, who said, I will, you know, go to my grave before I see them built, guess where he lives now? In one of those flats. So there's so many things that you could say. Yes, a lot of people in Prince's Parade don't want it, in Hythe don't want it. Most of them happen to live in their £1 million houses up on the hill and it will block their view. Down here in New Romney, we're having hundreds of houses built, not 300, 150, literally thousands of houses built here. I've got 78 being built on my doorstep. I don't want them. I fought against them in the planning. I lost. Okay. So you have to take it on the chin. You don't want houses being built at Otterpool, most of the Green Party and the Labour Party. We have to have these houses built. If we don't do it with our own planning department, the government will build it where they want. We won't have a say over this. So better do it on our own land that we own, because the council own it. And it's not, you know, the way I hear some of the councillors talk about it, this beautiful green vista where you can exercise. And you can't walk across Prince's Parade where we're going to build this because it is nothing but a jungle of brambles. And sympathetic development would be great, I think. A place for the family to go. Yes, the road will run alongside the lake. We're talking about 1/3 of the length of Prince's Parade. And if anything, the talk about it's going to be in the sea, where have you people been? We've had meeting after meeting after meeting. The sea defences, if anything, will be improved because of this. I can see Councillor Tony Hills is going to talk after me, and he's the king of the sea defences, so I'll leave all that to him. But, you know, hopefully, and a lot of people have criticised me in the past, when I was elected, said, oh, I was paid off as long as I would agree with Prince's Parade. I'm voting for Prince's Parade because I want Prince's Parade. I think it'll be a credit to the district. Yes, there will be some very expensive houses there, which will bring money into the district as well. But there'll also be its fair share of affordable housing. So I say, please, just let's put this to bed, vote for it, and hopefully we can see it start sooner rather than later.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hills.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. There's been so much said. I'll go back to what I said a couple of years ago at the council when I was howled down and wanted better sea defences to protect the canal. And everybody said, oh, no, you're just trying to go for the money, whatever the powers. No, I'm aware of the dangers from rising sea level. I'm aware of the dangers from rising temperatures, but I'm more concerned about major storm events. That's what you should worry about. We just spent a fortune doing some great sea defences, which are opening next month at Redoubts, at Hythe. It's part of the Foss's plan from Folkestone, from Folkestone to Cliff End. Now, the people might have forgot, the canal is not just Hythe. It goes right round to Rye. It girdles the whole marsh. If that canal gets flooded, then the whole of the marsh could be taken out and all the wildlife we have there. You're playing with fire. That's why I support Prince's Parade, to get better sea defences. We're just about to start next month on Lydd Ranges, £40 million worth, part of the schemes to protect the marsh, a major chunk of our district. Now, Councillor Treloar did say earlier on about we're all doomed within 30 years. But I tell you what, if we don't sort out Prince's Parade, the canal will be doomed and all the wildlife and a lot of the residents as well, who won't be very happy when they're paddling around. So I'm saying to you, I supported it then for that reason, and I still support it now for that reason. And I think really it's about time people woke up and smelt the coffee. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, we now go to the vote on the amendment, please, Gemma.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Mrs Berry.
Against.
Councillor Brooke.
Against.
Councillor Miss Carey.
Against.
Councillor Collier.
Against.
Councillor Davison.
For.
Councillor Field.
Against.
Councillor Fuller.
For.
Councillor Goddard.
Against.
Councillor Godfrey.
Against.
Councillor Hills. Councillor Hills.
Against, sorry, it was the mute.
Councillor Mrs Hollingsby.
Against.
Councillor King.
For.
Councillor Cutenius.
For.
Councillor Jim Martin.
For.
Councillor Philip Martin.
Against.
Councillor McConville.
For.
Councillor Mead.
For.
Councillor Mayers.
Against.
Councillor Monk.
Against.
Councillor Mullard.
Against.
Councillor Peel.
Against.
Councillor Prater. Councillor Prater.
For.
Councillor Rolfe.
Against.
Councillor Shoup.
For.
Councillor Treloar.
For.
Councillor Wade.
For.
Councillor Whitebrow.
For.
Councillor Wimble.
Against.
And Councillor Wing.
I hope my vote for was heard in the end. Apologies.
I make that 13 in favour and 16 against.
Okay, so that amendment falls. We will now go to the original motion. Does anyone wish to speak? No? Then we go to the vote.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Mrs Berry.
For.
Councillor Brooke.
For.
Councillor Miss Carey.
For.
Councillor Collier.
For.
Councillor Davison.
Against.
Councillor Field.
For.
Councillor Fuller,
Against.
Councillor Goddard,
For.
Councillor Godfrey,
For.
Councillor Hills,
For.
Councillor Mrs Hollingsby,
For.
Councillor Keane,
Against.
Councillor Cutenius,
Against.
Councillor Jim Martin,
Against.
Councillor Philip Martin,
For.
Councillor McConville,
Against.
Councillor Mead,
Against?
Councillor Mayers,
For.
Councillor Monk,
For.
Councillor Mallard,
For.
Councillor Peel,
For.
Councillor Prater,
Against.
Councillor Rolfe,
For.
Councillor Shue,
Against.
Councillor Trelaw,
Against.
Councillor Wade,
Against.
Councillor Wybrow,
Against.
Councillor Wimble,
For.
Councillor Wing.
Against.
So I make that 16 in favour and 13 against.
Right, so that's passed. Thank you. We now move to the next item, item 11. Capital Strategy 21 to 22 and Minimum Revenue Provision Statement 2021 to 2022, pages 109 to 126. Councillor Monk.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move that we accept the recommendations of report A/20/05.
Have you a seconder?
Happy to second, Chairman.
Thank you. Open to debate now, councillors, please. Nobody wishing to speak. We go to the vote.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Mrs Berry.
For.
Councillor Brooke.
For.
Councillor Miss Carey.
For.
Councillor Collier.
For.
Councillor Davison.
Against.
Councillor Field.
For.
Councillor Fuller.
Abstain.
Councillor Goddard.
For.
Councillor Godfrey.
For.
Councillor Hills.
For.
Mrs Hollingsby.
For.
Councillor Keane. Councillor Keane.
Again.
Councillor Cutenius.
Against.
Councillor Jim Martin. Councillor Jim Martin. Are you there, Councillor Martin?
Sorry, my mute button stopped working. I'm for.
Councillor Philip Martin.
For.
Councillor McConville.
Against.
Councillor Mead.
Against?
Councillor Mayers.
For.
Councillor Monk.
For.
Councillor Mallard.
For.
Councillor Peel.
For.
Councillor Prater.
Against.
Councillor Rolfe.
For.
Councillor Shue.
Against.
Councillor Trelaw.
For.
Councillor Wade.
Against.
Councillor Whitebrow.
Against.
Councillor Wimble.
For.
And Councillor Wing.
For.
So I make that 19 in favour, 9 against and 1 abstention.
Thank you. So that's passed, councillors. Thank you very much. We now move on to the next item, item 12. Investment strategy 21 to 22, pages 127 to 144. Have we a proposer, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm pleased to propose the Council accept the recommendations on report A/20/07.
Thank you, councillor. Have you a seconder?
Happy to second, Chairman.
Thank you, councillor. Open to debate now, councillors, please. Councillor Wybrow. You're on mute.
So I'm just checking that we are talking about the investment strategy because I'm just getting a bit tired now. So just clarify that.
Yes, investment strategy.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. No. I don't want to drag things out, but I just want to propose an amendment. And my amendment is to add a clause to the investment strategy to state that in accordance with the climate and ecological emergency motion that was passed in full council on the 24th of July 2019, all new investments will be assessed to ensure that they're in line with the shift to zero carbon by 2030. This doesn't really add anything that we shouldn't be doing already, but I just feel that we're not perhaps taking the climate into account in sufficient amount when we're looking at decisions. So I just wanted to add this as a bit of emphasis, please.
Have you a seconder?
Happy to second, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, we're open to debate now. Councillor Monk.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I believe this amendment to be slightly superfluous. The council has already agreed to do basically what this amendment asks. So that's just my view on it. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Anyone else wishing to speak? No. We'll go to the vote on the amendment.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Mrs Berry.
Against.
Councillor Brooke.
For.
Councillor Miss Carey.
Abstain.
Abstain.
Yeah, abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Collier. Councillor Collier.
Against.
Councillor Davison.
For.
Councillor Field.
Against. Against.
Councillor Fuller.
For.
Councillor Goddard.
Against.
Councillor Godfrey.
Abstain.
Councillor Hills.
Against.
Councillor Mrs Hollingsby.
Against.
Councillor Keane.
For.
Councillor Keane-Kennias.
For.
Councillor Jim Martin.
For.
Councillor Philip Martin. Councillor Philip Martin. Still on mute, Councillor Martin. Councillor Martin seems to be having trouble coming off mute. We'll move
Can
on.
you hear me now?
Oh, yeah, we can hear you, yeah.
Sorry, problems with my technology. I'm against this proposal.
Councillor McConville.
For.
Councillor Mead.
For.
Councillor Mayers.
Against.
Councillor Monk.
Against.
Councillor Mallard.
It's superfluous. Against.
Councillor Peel.
Abstain.
Councillor Prater.
For.
Councillor Rolfe,
Against.
Councillor Shute,
For.
Councillor Trelaw,
For.
Councillor Wade,
For.
Councillor Wybrow,
For.
Councillor Wimble,
Against.
Councillor Wing.
For.
So I make that 14 for, 12 against and 3 abstentions. It's carried.
So that's carried. I can't read that.
Motion.
This now becomes a substantive motion. Does anyone wish to speak? Councillor McConville.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I wasn't planning on speaking, but obviously very happy to support that motion, as I feel that message, the amendment, sorry, as that message needs to sort of echo in everything we do. However, I still have issues with the strategy, largely due to the things, the mechanisms in place, I guess, if you like, with regards to the Otterpool Park LLP and us not having full decision-making control, if you like, over some of these investments. So where some of that power is taken out of our hands, I was minded to vote against, but now that I've put in the amendment, I'm now going to abstain. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I can't read that. That's too faint. I can't see it. Right. Okay, Councillor, sorry for the delay there. We're now going to vote on the substantive motion. Gemma?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Mrs Berry.
For.
Councillor Brooke.
For.
Councillor Miss Carey.
For.
Councillor Collier.
For.
Councillor Davison.
Abstain.
Councillor Field.
For.
Councillor Fuller.
For.
Councillor Goddard.
For.
Councillor Godfrey.
For.
Councillor Hills.
For.
Councillor Mrs Hollingsby.
For.
Councillor King. Councillor King.
For.
Councillor Cutenius.
Abstain.
Sorry, can you repeat that, Councillor Cutenius?
Abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Jim Martin. Councillor Jim Martin.
Sorry, 4.
Councillor Philip Martin.
For.
Councillor McConville.
Abstain.
Councillor Mead.
Abstain.
Councillor Mayers.
For.
Councillor Monk.
For.
Councillor Mullard.
For.
Councillor Peel.
For.
Councillor Prater.
For.
Councillor Rolfe.
For.
Councillor Shue.
For.
Councillor Trelaw.
For.
Councillor Wade.
For.
Councillor Wybrow.
For.
Councillor Wimble.
For.
And Councillor Wing.
For.
I make that 25 in favour and 4 abstentions.
That passes. Thank you, councillors. It just behoves me to close the meeting now. Thank you for all your attendance throughout this year. I think the next meeting we've got will be in May. So it seems that we've got a few months off. Correct, ladies? It is. Okay, so that'll be full council once again, but not until May. It was good to see you all at this meeting, and I hope it won't be too long before we could meet face to face. It'd be nice to see you.